Now we're going to go to Kevin Harnett with a check on the weather, severe weather in the area.
Yeah, hey there, Kendrick. Interrupting the bed races for the tornado warning that's out. This includes a good chunk of Oldham County, including the LaGrange area. Let me zoom into that for you because we've been tracking this all afternoon where we had severe weather across southern Indiana, and we knew that the potential would be there for some rotation. This storm, again, is just showing some signs of rotation over the last 15 minutes or so. This includes parts of Henry, Oldham, and Shelby counties. This tornado warning is in place until 8:30. Again, you're going to see this move across southern parts of Oldham and eastern parts of Oldham County, southern Henry, and then extreme northern parts of Shelby County. This is well north of the Shelbyville area. We've been watching this on the radar. There is just a little of a couplet there where we see the rotation. You can see the indention there just passing by LaGrange. Let me put on the rotation for you, and if we look at the velocity, we'll be able to pick out where we have the rotation just south of LaGrange. So the greatest opportunity to see any type of damage out of this, and we know we've had strong winds. Northeast Jefferson County, many without power there. So we have been watching this moving across the Springhurst, Norton Commons area, and now over into southern Oldham County. I'm going to zoom in even more, and as we zoom in, we'll point out some of these features. This would be where we have the rotation right over the Centerfield area. This is going to track over 22 and eventually toward the Smithfield area. Regardless if it's a tornado or not, we know we have very powerful winds. At the airport alone, we measured 55-mile-per-hour winds. That was well away from this couplet, which is the strongest. And again, passing by Buckner, right over Centerfield would be the strongest winds. The bulk of the wind will stay just south of Interstate 71, but as it makes its way off to the east, and this storm is moving roughly at 40 miles an hour, we would expect power outages to continue to build with this, with that push of wind in particular. That is what we're seeing over the Centerfield area. Ryan Hoke is also in the studio with me here. Ryan, you have any damage reports coming in?
Yeah, no damage reports. In fact, the National Weather Service in Louisville says they have no reports, no confirmed reports of a tornado. They just don't like how the radar presentation is looking with that storm, of course, with the tornado warning on it currently. We have several power outages, especially across southern Indiana, over 3,000 without power right now in Jackson County, about 1,900 in Jennings County, Indiana. We'll likely see that spread into the Kentucky side of the river here shortly, Kevin, as we continue to track this tornado warned storm.
We had additional breaks from the severe weather that we had earlier, which was across parts of Jackson and Jennings County. Those were thunderstorms producing hail and strong winds. This is the first tornado warning that we've had out of the day. You can see the inflow into that storm, again, passing by Centerfield, rolling right up 22. So if you're familiar with that area, Centerfield right up to Smithfield as you cross the county line into Henry County. This is going to be southern, central parts of Oldham County, mainly south of LaGrange for the strongest of that wind. Again, it's all about being prepared. Make sure you're in your tornado safe place. We do know that we have strong winds with this because we've had a number of trees down. We know we have power outages, again, parts of Oldham County, but also parts of northeast Jefferson County where we were under severe thunderstorm warnings. And outside of that, the tornado warning was issued within those bounds simply because of the possible rotation. So when you check the warning coming out from the Weather Service, as Ryan just pointed out, it's radar indicated, meaning that it's not observed. We don't have any tornado on the ground that we're aware of, but we know we've had power outages. We know we have had trees down, and we know we've had wind gusts to 55 miles an hour in Louisville at the airport. With that, we see the potential for some rotation. It's broadening out just a bit. It's passing Centerfield. It's moving not too far from LaGrange, but the heaviest is still south, right along 22. Again, let me just zoom out on this for folks that are watching from across the area. I'll put the radar back on. That was the velocity. That gives us the wind speed and direction. Our home view is going to show the tornado warning within that severe thunderstorm warning we were tracking. It is not the only warning we have. In addition to the tornado warning, we have severe thunderstorm warnings. Northern Harrison County, southern parts of Washington County. That's in Indiana. That too is moving to the east. east. Flash flood warnings going on where we've had 3-4 inches of rain. New warning coming out for southern parts of Orange County and a good chunk of Crawford County. This severe thunderstorm warning is the latest warning, and I'll go to that for you so you can get the details on it. A lot of lightning with these storms and the potential for some hail, too. We haven't talked a lot about hail. That threat had diminished, but we're on the cooler side of the boundary, so up to quarter-size hail possible, especially where you see this magenta color, that pinkish color. So the latest warning is a severe thunderstorm warning. Radar indicated as well. This would be for Crawford, Orange, Perry, and Washington counties of Indiana. So that storm, too, moving to the east would bring it into parts of Harrison County and eventually making its way off into Floyd County, should it hold together. So that's the latest warning that we have. The one that obviously has our attention the most is the tornado warning. The wind with this intense. The damage has been noted in terms of trees down, power outages. That certainly is true for northeast Jefferson County, parts of Oldham County, so places like Prospect, Crestwood. You've likely seen the impact of this storm, and now we're tracking it as it moves south of LaGrange and closer to Henry County. I'm going to take the reflectivity off here and let me put the velocity back on. We've sort of been going back and forth, and again, right near 22 and 53, if you're familiar with that area, that is where we have the potential to see some of the strongest winds out of this. There is still some rotation, though it's fairly broad, so it's not like we're looking at a tight couplet or gate-to-gate wind shear where we would say, oh, that is a tornado. We can see it on the radar. No, it's not quite like that, but we do see broad rotation right around 53 and 22, so likely seeing some very strong winds there. New severe thunderstorm warning coming out, and this covers a fairly large area. This is Clark, Floyd, and Harrison counties of Indiana. This severe thunderstorm warning, again, with the potential for hail, less than quarter size, but still up there, and 60-mile-per-hour winds. This is going to be moving off to the east roughly at about 35 to 40 miles per hour as well. So we have a number of severe thunderstorm warnings. This tornado warning, damage coming in with power outages for sure. We can track those through Duke Energy and LG&E. And we also know that we've had viewers call in and email us and post on our social streams that we have some power outages and trees down northeast parts of Jefferson County. While I'm going back to the radar, Ryan, what do you have?
Yeah, I do want to go back to that storm in northern Harrison County with the new warning on it. We are sampling 65-mile-per-hour winds in Fairdale, Indiana. That's northern Harrison County, north of I-64 here. This is going to be tracking toward Greenville. This is going to be tracking toward areas of western Floyd County here pretty shortly, Kevin. So we don't want to lose sight of the fact that not only do we have the tornado threat east of Louisville, we've got the high wind and the hail threat to the west of the city right now.
These are going to be bursts of wind that you see within these little clusters of storms. So not everybody gets damage out of this, but it is certainly possible in these areas where we're picking out these pockets of heavy wind. We saw that from the one storm that Ryan was looking at in Harrison County. We can also see that in some of the storms moving closer to Floyd County. The tornado warning continues, and that warning is in place for just a bit longer. In fact, the expiration time on the tornado warning goes until when, Ryan?
That expiration time for the tornado warning is 8:30 p.m.
So 8:30, so we still have more than a half an hour on that. We'll go back to the velocity just to see any tightening on that. Remember, we were looking just south of LaGrange as it moves closer to the Smithfield area of Henry County. Let's zoom in just a bit more so we can tighten that up. Again, tough to pick out any potential, one location, but we do see that broad rotation, and they're going to continue that warning until the 8:30 time frame. It's moving off to the east. You see the sort of polygon updating, so Centerfield no longer in it. This is the area of concern. We pointed that out a while ago, right at 53 and 22. This is going to take it pretty much right at the triple point of where you intersect Oldham County with Henry and Shelby counties, north of Chestnut Grove, very close to Smithfield. That's going to be the area that experiences the greatest wind out of this, and certainly some straight line wind potential damage has already been located near LaGrange. So we have wind as far north as LaGrange out of this, where we have likely trees down, power out, and that's going to be the case as this push of wind moves through. So that is the area that we're watching for some very strong winds. We saw that northeast Jefferson, southern parts of Oldham. Now it continues as it pushes into Henry County. So the tornado warning put in place for a precaution with the potential for some rotation. It's radar indicated, it's not observed, but nonetheless it's still doing some damage, so it bears watching as this storm moves off to the east, roughly at about 35 miles an hour. Back to the radar view we go. In addition to the wind that we have, and you can see that notch, that's where we would have some of the strongest winds pushing through this storm. We also have very heavy rain that is continuing over and over in places, and that's yielding flash flooding. So if you don't have to be out through these storms, don't, especially now that we're getting closer to dark. That will cause some problems in itself. Nonetheless, as we look back to our home view, I should mention that we are tracking a number of areas. Of course, we mentioned the tornado warning with that wind and the potential within that to have those straight line winds, and that damage we already have. Northeast Jefferson County, we just added LaGrange to that, and now we look back to the west where we have the pockets of wind that Ryan was keeping an eye on. And Ryan, give us an update on what's moving, because this will move into southern Indiana and possibly even northern Jefferson County.
Right, so right now, New Salisbury, Indiana, that's where we're seeing this heavy pocket of winds. This pretty much aligns from Palmyra to New Salisbury down toward Corydon at this point. We are still sampling about 66 mile-per-hour winds on radar going through New Salisbury. Follow my hand here. It goes through Georgetown, Indiana. It will intercept I-64 a little closer to the US 150 interchange here. If you're trying to get off to go to Huber Farms there, that's where you find, of course, the kind of the next area. This will move through New Albany. You guys are also in line for this thunderstorm to move through with these gusty winds that could be over 60 miles per hour. That's about where the warning ends. Past that, Jeffersonville, maybe downtown Louisville would be in line for this, Kevin. So we're going to continue to track that over the next little bit.
Probably hearing the rumbles of thunder. We have a lot of lightning with these storms overhead, especially southern Indiana. Folks farther to the south, you're like, what are you talking about? It's not happening here. Your severe weather threat is limited. We do have other storms way back across parts of Missouri that may move in late tonight, but this is obviously the most imminent threat of storms that we're tracking across the area. Let me take the lightning off. It sort of clutters the screen, but I wanted to illustrate that. And then we'll zoom back into the tornado warning as we go back to the zoom feature. Severe thunderstorm warning stacked up from southern Orange through Crawford into, say, northern Harrison, right through southern Clark and Floyd counties. And then we obviously have the tornado warning over in parts of extreme eastern Oldham County, extreme northern Shelby County, and the southern half of Henry County. This is south of Campbellsburg. I'm going to zoom in fairly tight here so we can just track this. These storms today have been notorious for really finding where we have any rotation. These are not the massive tornado-producing storms that you may think. These are more of spin-up, if we were to see any type of rotation type storms, more hail producing storms and straight line wind producing storms. And that's what we've seen for the most part today. Back to the velocity, just to see if we can pick out any of the sort of fine details out of this. And you can see the Weather Service really keeping up with these warnings, clearing folks outside of that polygon. So it's now completely out of Oldham County. We'd be looking over southern parts of Henry County, south of Newcastle. Eminence would be next in line. It's moving through the Smithfield area, likely with some very strong winds across, say, from Smithfield to Newcastle down into northern Oldham County. Ryan, what do you have?
Okay, reported tree on a residential structure, basically a house on Brownsboro Alternate. That's Old Coach Road in Crestwood. So again, this is this exact storm that we're tracking here. Tree on a house, basically. Fire department is responding here. And by the way, if these storms just to the west of Louisville are to make it in here, it'd be about 8:27 p.m. that they would have the 60 mile per hour wind potential in the downtown area, Kevin.
We'll keep an eye on that as that moves in. Time after time, we see these lines of storms stacked up. Wind potential certainly looks great. We're increasing that low-level jet as we head into the evening hours here. That gives a little more energy aloft that can be pulled down by some of these thunderstorms. That means wind potential is certainly there. We look at the velocity and we see Eminence being next in line of seeing some of these very strong winds. We're keeping you ahead of this storm noting that we do have wind damage along its path from northeast Jefferson County up around, say, Springhurst, Norton Commons, trees down there, over to Centerfield, pushing through LaGrange. We know we have trees down there. So we're starting to see the electricity knocked out to more and more people, or the power outages continue to stack up. And with the tornado warning in this bounds, I suspect we're going to add to that near the Eminence area, likely seeing that pass through Smithfield now. So I would assume winds there, again, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour possible as we continue to track this along 22, shortly to cross over 55. And that's the intersection where you find Eminence as you work your way to the east. This storm will continue moving off to the east at about 35 miles an hour. The movement not extremely fast, but fast enough to see repetitive rounds of heavy rain, and that's yielding some flash flooding in places too. Severe thunderstorm warnings have been coming in throughout the afternoon across a number of places. We see the latest warning being expired for parts of Harrison and Washington counties. Additional storms back to the west. Ryan's going to give us a wider view of this whole system coming up in a second, but our focus obviously is very close to Metro Louisville, and that includes areas off to our east, which would include southern half of, say, Henry County and northern Shelby. It's within that severe thunderstorm warning that we also have the tornado warning. That is where we've seen the push of the strongest winds. Again, nothing confirmed. However, radar indicated and with damage, so it's not like nothing is happening. We do have damage. We know that we have trees down and power out to several thousand across the region. Back to the radar view we go. I'm going to zoom back in, check one more thing, and while I'm doing that, and I'll explain the initial steps of it here, and then we'll get over to Ryan. You can see the severe thunderstorm warning, the tornado warning embedded within that. It was along this line where we had the greatest threat of strong wind. Again, not a observed tornado, but certainly wind. Let me draw on this for you because our first reports came out of the Norton Commons, Springhurst area. Crestwood damage, LaGrange damage, and then this storm continues. And now this would be where we would see the greatest potential for damage from Springfield to Eminence, and then moving off to the east. That would take it at about 35 miles across the southern half of Henry County. Ryan, what do you have?
Yeah, multiple reports of tree and utility poles down throughout Oldham County now from their emergency manager, mainly in the Crestwood and Prospect area. So we are seeing at least some wind impact there from that exact segment of storm now moving into Henry County from Oldham County. This is the wide view. You see our one tornado warning here. Yes, there's a line of storms that's now plowing through the St. Louis area. This will approach the Louisville area closer to midnight tonight, though all the storms we have now may contaminate those storms and make them not as strong. So this may actually be our main show when it comes to severe weather. By the way, something I did want to mention real quick. Rainfall. Turn around. Don't drown. We've had nearly 3 inches of rain in Bedford. That's from the Grissom Airport up there, that sensor. And, of course, nearly an inch in Salem. We've had flooding, and that's been seen and reported in parts of Jackson County up there in Seymour. Here locally in Louisville, nearly an inch of rain in the Prospect area, 2/3 in Jeffersonville, 3/4 near Sellersburg. So take this seriously. We haven't had a whole lot of rain lately. So all this rain all at once on a somewhat dry soil, Kevin, can lead to flash flooding.
Oh, we're certainly seeing that on some of the interstates around Louisville as well. So be mindful of that if you know folks that are out and about, or if you have to get out and about. Some of this causing some major problems on area roads with increased flash flooding potential. We also have trees down in parts of southern Indiana from the folks over at Highland Fire. They're reporting tree on a car. That's over toward Bradford Road and Keisler Road. That's near Greenville, Indiana. So again, just on to the opposite side. My focus has been on the tornado warning that we have now moving along the border of Shelby and Henry counties. That's passing by the Eminence area. Let's zoom back in. This is the storm that has caused the bulk of the problems, at least within the last half hour. We did see earlier this afternoon major issues with thousands of people without power in Jackson and Jennings County. While this was the same cluster of storms, it had weakened substantially, but now it's seeing its uptick again, and this is now moving closer to 55. And as that moves near 22 and 55, or excuse me, over near 55 near Eminence, that would be where we see the strongest of those winds pushing south of Eminence and north of Shelbyville as you work your way toward 55. So that's the zone that has the strongest wind potential. Let me just zoom again to the velocity, and we'll look for any. Yeah, and it's so broad, it's so tough to tell, but it's that shift in the direction where you'll note the strongest winds. New severe thunderstorm warning sort of being revised around that, so wouldn't be surprised to see this tornado warning perhaps expire a little early. Let me zoom out so we can see that, and then I'll zoom back into it. So again, just trimming the back edge of that up. The Weather Service kind of keeping both of those polygons in the same general vicinity. The winds extend out past the tornado warning, and that's what we saw in Oldham County, where LaGrange, which wasn't technically in the tornado warning, still saw straight line winds and had the damage, and that's what we're likely seeing in places too. So we are seeing some wind. That's going to be the biggest issue. The rotation, secondary. Regardless, they both cause damage, and that's the important part to know as we continue to track these winds. This is one area, though, seems to be weaker than what we even see now back to our west across parts of Harrison County, moving into western Floyd County. This may wind up being a bigger wind maker out of the deal than what we're now seeing across parts of parts of northern Shelby and the southern half of Henry County, with a push of wind that continues to move off to the east. Ryan?
Yeah, and that push of wind right now, we're sampling 50 to 60 mile per hour winds in that push within that area of storms here. This is a new radar scan coming in showing you Greenville, Georgetown, and Lanesville. Doesn't look as impressive as it once did, but we could still easily see some of these 60 mile per hour wind gusts. And this is all shifting closer to the I-65 corridor. New Albany, you guys are next. Sellersburg, you guys are next as well with this pushing eastbound here. And we did get some intelligence here from the emergency manager in Oldham County. They're not seeing a specific pattern of damage, meaning this is just kind of a widespread sort of straight line wind situation that they saw in Oldham County, perhaps. Just a guess at this point based on what they've seen. Jeffersonville, tree across the roadway, Haymarket Drive, Cooper's Lane in Jeffersonville, power lines down. That per the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, Kevin.
Yeah, be careful. Remember, never drive around those power lines. Let the crews do their work. They are out in this mess, making sure that we're all safe. Back to the radar view we go. And I'll just point out that we do have heavy rain moving across southern Indiana. That's going to cause some flash flooding. Those will be the next set of alerts that come out, I'm sure. But for now, we have severe thunderstorm warnings and the one tornado warning that we've been tracking. It's 10 after 8. We've been at this for just about the last 15, 20 minutes, and we continue to track that until the threat expires across the area. Once the tornado warning expires, we'll resume our coverage nonstop on Wave Weather Now, the 24-hour weather channel and stream that we have. You can find that on the Wave Weather app. But in the meantime, looking at the velocities and the reflectivity, this is easing just a bit. And that is certainly some good news for those across southern parts of Henry County and northern Shelby County. Does it mean that it is completely powered down and there is no threat of wind damage? No, that is not the case. But from what we were looking at, it is a weaker signature on both the velocity and the reflectivity, and that's good news. As this continues to track off to the east at about 35 miles an hour, there is still wind potential now passing by the Eminence area, and that will continue working its way just south of Newcastle. It's most likely that Newcastle is out far enough away from the core of that wind push that it's not going to see any damage out of that. I would suspect we're starting to add up the power outages across parts of northeast Jefferson, Oldham, likely parts of Henry County, and perhaps even the northern part, though it's a fairly rural area as we look into north and northwestern parts of Shelby County. Let me go back to the reflectivity, and then we'll come back to a wider view. I know some folks aren't in that zone, and they're like, what about me? What about my house? If you're south of Interstate 64, you're not seeing severe weather, and the threat of severe weather is minimal for you until very late tonight. tonight. And what that looks like is still in question because it depends what this does to our atmosphere. A lot of this area is getting worked over in the atmosphere where we probably won't have to deal with a whole lot of severe weather later tonight. Some areas to our south, though, are a little more unstable, have been left untapped in terms of the atmosphere. And as those storms move in later tonight, should they continue without weakening before they arrive, we may not have a lot to, weaken them as they move into the southern part of our viewing area. So that's an area we'll be watching. That would be after midnight tonight, most likely. Obviously, the current threat is lined up right along Interstate 64, and that includes us here in Louisville and certainly areas both west and east of us where we have the severe thunderstorm warnings, and in the case of Henry County and northern Shelby County, the one lone tornado warning that we've been tracking. At this point, this storm continues to be on the weakening phase, though we still see that notch coming in, so that's new on the last scan. Let's go back to the velocity. This is just the way we handle severe weather. We constantly go back and forth between reflectivity and the velocities to see if there is still signs of weakening or a decrease in intensity on these storms. And yes, right along 421, not far from Eminence, but south of Newcastle, we can still see where we have that potential for the strongest of the winds making its way off to the east. Ryan?
Okay, power outages. Let's get some updated numbers on that. We now have Louisville involved with this. This is Jefferson County, the Louisville area. 1.5% of customers, that's about 6,100 customers without power here inside the Louisville Metro. Hello, Oldham County. You guys have been rocked by this. 239 customers for now. That number will likely go up substantially here in the next few minutes as that data continues to pour in. Henry County, about 92 customers. Hello to Harrison County, Indiana, 3.2%. Finally, Jackson and Jennings, you guys were hard hit a little earlier today. Nearly 10% of Jackson County is without power. That's about 3,000 customers there. Jennings County, about 2,000 customers. That's about 13% of Jennings County without power right now, Kevin. These are pretty substantial power outages, not from a tornado, but straight line winds throughout the day.
Well, we've been keeping an eye on some of our traffic cameras from across the area as well. Roads are wet here in some areas. We've seen the flash flooding with water building up, especially along Interstate 64. So word of caution there, as long as this heavy rain continues, flash flooding will be an issue. We've got a lot of lightning with these storms. We've had a lot of wind in pockets with these storms. Not everywhere, but within pockets. This warning goes until 8:30. That's about another 15 minutes.
They're going to drop the warning here in just a moment, it looks like.
Good news. And again, we've seen it slowly weaken, so hopefully the tornado warning will be allowed to expire early. The National Weather Service giving some indication that another round, and then they'll hopefully be able to make that decision to say, hey, there is still no threat out of this, and let it go. Still a possible wind threat, but again, we're on nonstop with the tornado warning. If we go to just severe thunderstorm warnings, give us a second. We'll come back, and we'll certainly be here to walk you through the severe thunderstorm warnings on all of our digital platforms, but we'll get you back to NBC through the evenings. Looking around the area from our home view, we do have additional storms with a lot of wind now moving across Harrison County. Our SkyTrack cameras located in the Corridon area probably seeing some of that wind. We also have SkyTrack cameras up in Starlight, Indiana, and then closer to the Ohio River, of course, from New Albany back over into Jeffersonville and here in the downtown area. So we have been watching some of that wind push in. 55-mile-per-hour winds recorded at the airport as you work your way across central Jefferson County. And the tornado warning for Henry and Shelby just now being allowed to expire. So that's good news. You see it fall off the map. So what we're dealing with now, and we'll make one more loop around so you can hear Ryan's latest report. And again, we're getting real-time information in. So as soon as we get it, you're getting it as far as damage. But at this point, we still have severe thunderstorm warnings for those areas, southern parts of Henry County, northern Shelby County, and then stacked up west of Louisville as we move across southern parts of Orange, Crawford, Harrison, southern parts of Washington, far western and southern parts of Clark County and Floyd County. These storms, you can see, it's like three distinct little bands moving in. Heavy rain, but also pushes of wind coming in with that. Ryan, one final check.
All right, one final check, and that's just going to be to the west of Louisville that we're looking here, where I've circled circled in magenta. You see these kind of hot spots of green here. These are 30 to 50 mile per hour wind gust potentials moving through Floyd County, moving toward Louisville. This is much less concentrated, much less strong than it was before here. This is transitioning, as we've been talking about, to mainly a flooding threat here in Louisville. The wind threat morphing to kind of a heavy rain situation here because the atmosphere is getting so contaminated, as we've been talking about here. So we'll likely see some more flash flood warnings being issued as we go throughout the evening, Kevin. No surprise there.
All right. Appreciate that. We're going to wrap up our coverage on the NBC Wave channel. But if you want to continue watching nonstop weather coverage, give us a minute and we'll jump back on the stream. You can find us on the Wave Weather app, the Wave News app, or any streaming device you may have. For now, I'm Kevin Harned with Ryan Hoke, and our whole team will be back online and back at 11 o'clock, if not before, as needed, with any additional interruptions that we need to make. Hi, everybody. Kevin Harned, Ryan Hoke. We're bringing nonstop tornado weather coverage to you. This is not going to last long because this is in our extreme northern Indiana community. Parts of Lawrence County have seen severe weather throughout the day today, and the latest warning being issued for Jennings County is now coming in until 12:45. So 15 minutes on this. We're tracking this through Butlerville. This storm has had a history of producing strong winds. We saw these measured at over 60 miles per hour coming in out of the Seymour area.
Right, and these storms have had a history of putting down wind damage across the US 50 corridor of southern Indiana here. This very skinny tornado warning, again, only encompassing the Butlerville area of the Jennings County corridor there, and this is going to be over not too much time, 10, 15 minutes. We should be able to be out of your hair here, so just stick with us, and we'll have the latest as we go through time.
I should point out this does not include Brewersville. This does not include North Vernon. This does not include Hayden. This is in a somewhat rural area near the Butlerville area, right along US 50. This storm moving through with very strong winds will be approaching Nebraska, Indiana, and then eventually across the county line. And again, it's a very narrow tornado warning that is in place for another 15 minutes across parts of northern and far eastern parts of Jennings County, Indiana.
Yeah.
We've had the report, and the only report that we've had would be the wind, and that was a 63 mile per hour gust coming out of Seymour in the airport there.
Yeah, KSER Airport in Seymour had that wind gust not too long ago, just after midnight here. We're showing you, again, the reflectivity here, kind of showing you that wavy pattern from Zenith down toward Nebraska, Butlerville. This is along US 50 in Jennings County, Indiana. Whenever you get these squiggles like this in a line of storms, that gives us pause because that's where rotation can develop. And that one little jut back near Butlerville there is the most concerning look to this thing. And that's why the National Weather Service in Indianapolis decided to put out that tornado warning for the very northeastern part there of Jennings County. If you're in North Vernon, this doesn't involve you. And as we zoom out, look how few of us are under warnings right now. This is not a Louisville problem. This is not a Kentucky problem. This is just northeast Jennings County, Indiana.
The rest of us, there are no warnings currently in place, minus the flooding that we have going on, and that will be only aggravated by the heavy rain that's moving back in. However, the only severe warning that we have is the tornado warning in our viewing area, north and eastern parts of Jennings County. If you are in that area, you should be in your tornado safe place. Strong winds have been reported with this over 60 miles an hour, and obviously if we were to see any tornado out of the deal, that could put down even more damage. This is moving past the Zenith area as well as Butlerville. It is already past North Vernon, so the warning does not include you. This is right along US 50 in southern Indiana as you make your way into the very northern part of the wave viewing area.
Yeah, these storms have been moving at a pretty good clip, so they're not going to last too long in the Butlerville area here. Some of these warnings have had forward speeds on them of 70 to 80 miles per hour. That's how fast the storms are moving, not necessarily how fast the winds are that are making it to the ground here. As we approach the 12:45 time frame, about 12 minutes left on this morning here, that's when we'll see that expiration. About 6 lightning strikes, by the way, within the last 10 minutes within this segment of storms that you're seeing here. So it's not a big lightning maker, which is some good news. Typically, storms with a ton of lightning and then the lightning count drops very suddenly. that's when you run into tornado problems. This is not that situation here. This is just sort of a baseline tornado threat for the Butlerville area. We've had no reports of any sort of confirmed tornado damage, nor tornado actually touching the ground here. But again, this is out of an abundance of caution. You see the newest radar update there. With the county line being very, very close to where this rotation is. Kevin's putting on some of the times for you there, but you get the idea that this will be moving out of Jennings County in just mere minutes.
Yeah, we'll be able to get you back even before the expiration time. Once this crosses that county line, the NBA is back on for you for those watching. If you're watching on our digital stream, we've been online covering this for a while now. We are tracking these storms across the area. I zoomed out on this a while ago, and I'll point out here in Louisville that we don't have severe weather moving in, minus the flooding, but we do have the potential for some lightning, some thunder moving our way, and possibly some gusty winds, but likely staying below severe limits. At this point, some of the heaviest rain is lined up across southern Washington County, moving into northern parts of Clark County, northern Harrison County, about to move into northern Floyd, arcing through Crawford and swinging back toward Evansville. The threat of severe weather will continue to gradually decrease as the night goes on, with heavy rain expected. Consequently, I think our biggest issue might be some flash flooding through the overnight hours.
And flash flooding can be some of the most deadly weather that we encounter in our area. You know, tornadoes kind of get all the glory, but unfortunately, flash flooding can be a whole lot deadlier. So please turn around, don't drown. There's a new radar scan. This is just about over. We are getting real close.
It's moving 65 miles an hour off to the east, so this is a very quick hitting. As soon as we see the next scan come in, we can get this part out of the county, because this is the county line. We'll be able to move off real fast. So we're at 12:36. I suspect within the next 2 minutes we'll be able to bail out of this tornado warning for you, get you back to the ball game for folks that were watching the NBA on NBC, and for those that want nonstop weather coverage, we'll keep going on our digital streams, and you can find us on the Wave Weather and the Wave News app. For the most part, we'll just keep stressing the threat of severe weather is minor across the area for tonight. We're watching that area to our north and west and back out to our south and east, southwest and northeast, where we have these storms pushing through the area. So again, looking to the north. And as you look up toward the North Vernon area, the Madison area, farther to the north, heavy rain. The only issue is that tornado warning that we have, but it is just about out of our viewing area. And then the cluster of thunderstorms back to our south and west across parts of far western Kentucky. Those will likely stay just off to the west of our viewing area as well. So let me go back up. We'll check one more time on this storm. The new scan will be coming in momentarily, and once that happens, we'll be able to bail out.
Yeah, so what you can see right now is there's the new scan. Just as we said, the danger is pretty much almost completely past here.
We'll get you back to the NBA on NBC. Sorry for the interruption. We're making sure we keep everybody that may have heard the tornado sirens go off updated. We'll continue with our nonstop weather coverage on all of the digital platforms from Wave.
Hi, I'm John.
Hi, everybody. Kevin Harned with you. Ryan Hoke is here as well. We've been keeping an eye on the storms all morning, I guess it is. In fact, we've been here for about 2.5 hours tracking these storms on our digital stream. Now we have to break back into programming with the tornado warning. This includes parts of Grayson, Hardin, Hart, LaRue County. This is the storm we've been watching where we said we had this notch develop within that storm, and that would be one that we had to keep an eye on. It's right over the Fragrant area. It's going to move toward Millerstown. If you've been watching us, you know this is nothing new. We've been tracking this. However, with the velocity showing that there is not a defined couplet, but we do see that little notch where we have the potential for some rotation to show up.
Right, and the National Weather Service in Louisville said, okay, it's time for a tornado warning for this. Again, we are basically just south and east of Clarkson. This has put down some pea-sized hail in the Litchfield area. This is now moving toward Millerstown. This is now moving toward Bonneville, Upton. So this is parts of LaRue. This is parts of Hart. This is parts of Grayson County. County, currently under this tornado warning here. And this is going to go on for just a little bit. Magnolia also under that red polygon. So if you know folks in that area, give them a call, wake them up, say, hey, it's time to watch the coverage on WAVE.
There are only 2 warnings that we have in the whole viewing area, and they are in the same place. One with a severe thunderstorm warning. You see that sort of flashing around that red polygon, which is the tornado warning. And that warning will go until 1:45 Central Time, so 2:45 Eastern Time. And again, the greatest threat would be wind with this system as it pushes through. The tornado warning obviously showing some signs of rotation, and for that reason we get the tornado warning as opposed to just straight line winds or the severe thunderstorm warning. It is this notch that we have right there that would be the concern, and that's where we have the greatest potential for that rotation showing up approaching the Millerstown area as we speak. It's important to point out also that we've had no confirmed reports. This is radar indicated at this point. And when we look at the radar view, all across the viewing area today, we've had heavy rain, lots of tremendous lightning with this line of storms passing through. But there have been little in the way of wind reports over the last, I'd say, hour or so in this area. There have been some places where we have had strong winds, and that has certainly caused some power outages across parts of Indiana and Kentucky.
Yeah, and power outages were tremendous a little earlier along US 50 in southern Indiana. That's Lawrence, Jackson, and Jennings counties. That has improved somewhat, which is good news. What we are continuing to monitor for, though, are additional power outages that may be happening in Kentucky thanks to this line of storms now moving through. And you see, of course, there is no tornado watch attached to this actual tornado warning at this time, but there you go with the power outages. Some of the worst ones by percentage, Trimble and Carroll counties in Kentucky here. And you'll note, of course, that we do have flood alerts that are ongoing because of all the heavy rain that has happened to our north. This is the current radar view, and this is what we're most concerned with, of course, which is the tornado warning, eastern Grayson County.
And that's the tornado warning in our viewing area. We also have another tornado warning right along the Kentucky-Ohio border. That's well away from us. Our focus goes to the south. Again, the 2 warnings that we have, one severe thunderstorm warning, one tornado warning right in the same location. I'm just going to move the radar briefly. Let me pause it so we can see the storm as it moves toward Millerstown. That's where we have sort of that bend in the general line, and that is where we would have the greatest potential for some of that rotation. Strong winds, certainly the potential for that to rotate is there, and with that the tornado warning stays in place.
Sirens going off in Radcliffe right now, but just understand that Radcliffe is not under a tornado warning. So if you do hear a tornado siren, turn on the TV or look at the WAVE weather app or our live stream here, figure out what's going on. Doesn't necessarily mean your exact location may be under a tornado warning. Some of these siren systems go off for a whole county, even though maybe a little bit of it is in it.
And that's the tough part, because Elizabethtown's not in this either. This is well to the south. This is southern parts of Hardin County. This includes extreme northern Hart County, which include the Bonneville area, Upton, Magnolia, Millerstown. It's just about, in the next couple of minutes, out of Grayson County. And as far as LaRue County is concerned, it's more there than probably in Hardin County and the extreme northern part of Hart County, as we pointed out. That warning is in place until 1:45 Central Time as this storm tracks off to the south and southeast. Let me get a speed on this for you. And as we look at that speed, it's moving at 55 miles per hour off to the east.
The Grayson County Emergency Management Office has a camera on top of it that's focused on this storm. They have not seen any lowering from the clouds. That's a good sign. That means nothing nefarious is going on underneath of this storm here that would suggest like that a tornado is actually occurring. However, there is enough rotation and that notch in the storm here to give us that tornado warning designation from the National Weather Service in Louisville. This is a proactive thing. We've been watching this here for quite some time, since it was well in western Kentucky, and now here it is over the Millerstown area. Again, Millerstown, take cover. Lowest level of your home away from doors and windows here. Kevin has put on some of the times that you can see here. In fact, we'll take those full for just a minute so you can read those a little easier. And you'll see there that includes Upton at 2:37 a.m. That's Eastern Time. Hammondville 1:43 Central. Magnolia, that's 2:46 Eastern Time. And then Powder Mill, that's 1:49 Central Time. We're right on the dividing line between Central and Eastern Time, which makes it a little bit of a challenge sometimes, but thankfully the computers can figure that out for us.
Moving at 55 miles an hour, this is passing by fast. For folks that this may have awakened simply because we have alerts with those alarms going off or sirens going off, you can see much of the area is in the clear. It's areas along and south of the parkways that still have that chance for strong to severe storms. If you're not in that area, you're in the clear. And with that, we're tracking the tornado warning across. It's just about move into western Hardin County, but it's still right over Millerstown. That's the area where we have the greatest potential. And that would be moving into southern Hardin. And boy, it's barely going to clip Hardin before it moves into LaRue and northern parts of Hart County.
So that's northern Hart County, Bonneville, that's in the crosshairs of this at this time here, getting ready to cross I-65. The area of concern of rotation will probably hit just north of Bonneville, so this is going to be almost square between Upton and Bonneville, I-65. This will move straight across, and that's where we'll start to see, you know, the risk of rotation start to increase there. I'm going to draw up there's a traffic camera. I'll do this on the other weather computer while you keep talking, Kevin.
Right. Sure.
And we'll be able to get a live view of I-65 down there. I think we've got one pretty close to Bonneville.
This is where we would see the rotation showing up on radar. Now, at this point, nothing's confirmed. This is all radar indicated. The tornado warning is in place because of what we've been watching for the last probably, I'd say at least half hour. And if you've been on the stream with us, you know that we were tracking this through that entire time. We've been on our digital assets for about more than 2.5 hours. And with that, we have been keeping a very close eye on this little notch because this storm had previously been tornado warned across parts of Ohio County. It came into Grayson County. It had sort of flattened out a bit. And then within the last half hour or so, we kept seeing this notch trying to redevelop. And that's where we have the inflow into the storm, where we still see the potential for some rotation. It is not, again, a super tight couplet on this storm, so it's tough to even pick out at this point, but it would be past the Millerstown area. It's going to go right in between Upton and Bonneville. So as this storm makes its way off to the east, 55 miles an hour, should we see any issue, it would be between Upton and Bonneville at this point. And Ryan's punching up the traffic camera so we can see it. This is going to be down into northern parts of Hart County, very close to the Bonneville area. Lots of lightning showing up with that.
Yeah, no surprise, this lightning here, given the storms moving in, literally making night and today for a few seconds here and there. You can see the cars traveling on I-65. This is near the LaRue County line, so this is going to be real close. Basically right between Upton and Bonneville where this camera is, so we'll be able to see in real time what's going on, at least from a looking down perspective of what may be going on.
They're not even seeing the heavy rain there yet.
No, it's dry as a bone, which is not surprising given the radar presentation.
So again, we track this tornado-warned storm. This is coming across parts of Grayson County. It's moving out of that county, so we'll be able to let that go and then keep southern Hardin, southern parts of LaRue and northern Hart County all in that warning until 1:45 Central Time. That storm, again, still showing a little bit of a wiggle in it or a little bit of an inflow, if you will. But when we look at the velocity, there is no tight gate-to-gate or rotation that we would normally see for a very strong couplet or tight rotation. Yeah, which is good news.
And there's the traffic camera again. This is northern Hart County here. Some of that lightning has been exceptionally bright. There you see Grayson County, 1.2% of Grayson County without power. That's 225 customers. That's just new to in here from our Wavy alert bot.
I'll put on the lightning, a tremendous amount of lightning with this storm. Obviously, you can see that through the traffic camera. We can also see it on the radar view. And with that, we have noted in parts of the viewing area to our south, massive amounts of lightning, though on the decrease over the course of the last few hours.
Yeah, and that's an overall decrease in storm intensity we're seeing as well. They've now updated this tornado warning here. They've gotten rid of Grayson County out of it, so that's good. Grayson County, you are now in the clear from this tornado warning. This is exclusively for the extreme southern part of Hardin and then parts of Hart and LaRue County, right at the LaRue and Hart County line here.
Well, this will be interesting to watch because we can see it on the radar, but we also have the camera up from the Trimark and the Department of Transportation where heavy rain should be moving in. That'll obscure our view, but at this point we can see the lightning, and if there were to be anything, we would certainly be able to hopefully hear. There seems to be a number of people traveling up and down I-65, so the pretty decent storm coming their way within the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, of course, we are live streaming on Wave Weather now. It's our 24/7 weather live stream here as we take the northern Hart County I-65 camera from KYTC full there, and you'll see, of course, all the folks traveling and maybe a little bit of rain on the lens. Hard to tell there, maybe just a lens flare, but it's a busy stretch of road at 2:32 Eastern, 1:32 Central at night here. So many folks are trying to get out and about from Louisville to Nashville.
Well, the stream has been a popular place this evening, and now we're broadcasting on Wave because of the tornado warning. We've had tens of thousands of people watching us through our apps, both the news and weather app. And then, of course, we're on all of our social platforms as well. Whether you're watching on X or Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, we've got a lot of places where you can view us. We always say the best place happens to be the Wave Weather app. That is where we have and host our 24/7 weather channel. It's called Wave Weather Now. It's Louisville's only 24/7 weather channel that has live interruptions of severe weather information throughout the day, every day. And tonight we happen to be interrupting that with the tornado warning that is moving across southern parts of LaRue County, southern parts of Hardin County, and northern parts of
People are
Hart
putting
County.
their flashers on. I've noticed there on the top right-hand side of the camera, multiple vehicles on I-65 north in Hart County. Not quite sure why, but it may be because the rain is moving in, something foreboding perhaps. But yeah, a lot of folks with their flashers on now.
And you can see they would be moving across, if we were looking at the traffic going northbound, which
Yes.
we were,
Yep.
the tail lights to us would be the cars traveling
Bingo.
north. They would be moving right into that storm, so they probably see it ahead of them.
They can see more than we can, and I'm sure it's definitely something that they don't want to drive into very quickly, hence the flashers.
The tornado warning includes the Buffalo area. That's also going to include Upton, Vento, Bonneville. Those are areas, again, the last scan, repronouncing, if you will, that notch into the storm. Let's look at the velocity. And with that, we can see that the push of wind as well. At this point, the strongest wind would be going toward Vento and Bonneville. This would be where we would see that push of wind coming through, and that has the ability to produce even straight line winds that could cause some damage, upwards of 70 miles per hour in places, even without the full rotation needed to see an actual tornado touchdown.
Yeah, so if you're in Bonneville, it's your time to take cover. This storm is pretty much on you. This is crossing I-65 as we speak. Very big lightning producer, probably has some gusty winds. Definitely a pea-size hail situation with this as well. We've seen a lot of reports of pea-size hail with this earlier when it was in Litchfield and a little closer to Clarkson and Fragrant, Kentucky, but now it is moving into the very north central part of Hart County there between Upton and Bonneville is our biggest area of concern, both Upton and Bonneville underneath the tornado warning here until 45 after.
We've been tracking storms since this afternoon around this time, so we're 12 hours in to where we had our first strong to severe storms appear, and now we continue to track them throughout the overnight hours. If you are along and south of the parkways, you still have the threat of severe weather. If you're north of the Western Kentucky or Bluegrass Parkway, you are in good shape, and you may still be hearing the thunder, seeing the lightning. You have some rain, but at this point, the threat of severe weather over is ended north of the parkways. Let's jump back into the tornado-warned storm to the south. I'm going to point out that we have heavy rain falling from Bardstown, stretching across parts of Washington County, including Willisburg and Springfield. That arcs into northern parts of LaRue County, central Hardin County. That includes Hodgenville and Elizabethtown. But the tornado warning that we are focused on, zoom in even more, happens to be moving across northern Hart County and southern LaRue County at this point. Right along 65, close to Bonneville and Upton. Ryan pointed that out. It was between the two, and that's where we were talking about this notch that comes in, a little inflow into that storm. With that, the velocity shows that as well. That is the push of wind that is now passing past Bonneville and will make its way farther to the east. This storm is moving east at 55 miles an hour, and that will continue to be a problem across southern LaRue County and northern Hart County.
It's probably a good time to just reinforce that Louisville is fine, southern Indiana is fine. We are in the clear. This is northern Hart County, southern LaRue County. That's where this traffic camera is right here, with some of the most frequent lightning I have seen in a very long time in this area here. You can see a near constant illumination of I-65 North. And notice there's very few cars, but when they do come by here, sometimes they have their flashers on, like this vehicle here on the right side of your screen. There's some rain on the lens. It is finally raining there now, it looks like. So this storm is in full effect there in northern Hart County.
What would normally be a completely dark picture is being illuminated by some headlights, but more importantly and more frequently, certainly, by the lightning that's overhead. And you can see that constant flicker of lightning that continues. The tornado warning will continue for about another
We may have just lost
8
the
minutes. And it looks like that camera may have gone down.
Yeah, okay.
We'll come back to that. The wind is picking up. We can see the storm approaching I-65, and you'll notice that from our radar view here. We don't have real-time wind reports coming out of there, though the Kentucky Mesonet likely has one down near the Bonneville area as you work toward Munfordville. So it would be close, but probably not in it. There may be one in the Upton area. I'm not sure where that one for LaRue County is. We'll check on that to see if we have an actual wind speed. Nonetheless, the notch still shows up on the reflectivity. On the velocity, we still see it as well. So that is a pretty decent punch of wind that is moving through Hart County in particular. That's going to be moving near High Hickory, the northern end of that, and over toward Jonesville. Jonesville. And as that storm moves toward Jonesville, you can expect your winds to increase as well. That's the area we're watching. That is the area that we have been watching for more than an hour now. And that's because we were pointing out that the signs of rotation kept sort of ebbing and flowing. And we've said all along with this line of storms that the general threat would gradually decrease, but it wasn't a switch that you could say, okay, we're turning off severe weather, there will be no more. It's sort of like powering down an engine. It takes a little bit of time to completely get it all faded away. And we're in sort of our last gasp of it. When we look at the watches and warnings we have, severe thunderstorm watch, southern parts of the viewing area, generally along and south of the parkways. Clusters of thunderstorms, sure, we have those. The greatest going on across the Kentucky-Ohio border, farther to the north. And then farther to the south, we sort of have just this one strong storm. That's the tornado-warned storm, while Nashville is under severe thunderstorm warnings, and there are several other severe thunderstorm warnings across parts of Tennessee. For us in our viewing area, outside of a few flood warnings, and those are flash flood warnings, we only have the severe thunderstorm and tornado warning across parts of central Kentucky. And that shows that rotation, southern parts of LaRue, northern parts of Hart.
Yeah, 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts from the Kentucky Mesonet in LaRue County, 27 miles per hour there in Hart County. This is the LaRue County I-65 traffic camera. We lost the connection to the Hart County one. That may be a power outage issue, by the way, because it seemed like it kind of reached a tipping point there with that. But thankfully, LaRue County's camera is still online. You can see the water running down the lens, and it's certainly got quite an active view there as those folks are driving through some pretty heavy rain at this point.
Oh, we have crashes going on here in the metro, likely outside of the weather that's actually happening because our weather is eased here. There's a crash at Grade Lane here in Louisville on 65. The tornado warning goes for just a few more minutes. We've got 4 more minutes on this warning. Radar indicated, but we certainly have had some strong winds with this, losing power to the camera that was located not far from the Bonneville area as you work your way into southern parts of LaRue County. For folks that may be watching on Wave, we're breaking into your overnight coverage because of the tornado warning that's ongoing to the south. This is for southern parts of LaRue County, northern parts of Hart County. At this point, Hardin County is out of it, and it's pretty much confined to southern LaRue and northern Hart. So the radar polygon will be updating again here in just a second. With that said, we have had reports throughout the day today that some of these stronger storms have produced wind damage, and that included even folks here in Jefferson County, northeast Jefferson County, Oldham County, over into parts of Henry County. Saw earlier some very strong winds that knocked out thousands of customers without power.
Yeah, we've got a new severe thunderstorm warning that's tornado possible. Radar indicated for Green, Hart, and LaRue, including Marion and parts of Nelson and Taylor. And this goes until 3:30 Eastern time. So now we're butting up against the 3:30 time frame here Eastern time with that new warning that is coming out here. That should be out pretty shortly.
Yeah, and you can see it lit up on the map. This is the warning. I'll click on it so you get the details. Again, Ryan pointed out the tornado possible tag, and that's just an indicator that this is going to replace the tornado warning, though if they need to draw that polygon in there, they can still upgrade a small part of that severe thunderstorm warning to a tornado warning, and that will go until 3:30 Eastern time, mainly for wind, and that wind gust would be upwards of 70 to 80 miles an hour, it looks like, or 60 miles an hour.
Yes,
sorry.
60 miles per hour on that wind there. We are tracking some very strong winds as well outside of that warning, just near Loretto at this time. Those probably aren't making it to the ground, but there's a lot of wind energy associated with the atmosphere today. So these storms are able to channel that and take it down to ground level, pretty quickly here. And that's why we're concerned about not only, the small tornado threat this evening, but the damaging straight line wind potential that we have seen come to fruition in parts of Kentucky and especially southern Indiana earlier today with the wind damage they've had.
The tornado warning continues for 2 more minutes at this point, and then the severe thunderstorm warning will continue past that until 3:30. Looking back at what we were watching as this approaches Jonesville, this would be that minor notch that you see. And again, it gets a little squiggly along that line, and that's where we would have some of the greater wind pushes or gust of wind. And at this point, the velocity has flattened out somewhat. And that's an indicator that we're losing some of that wind and the rotation potential that the radar originally saw. That's good news. That's a weakening trend on this. It doesn't mean that it can't tighten back up, but the whole trend in general will be to weaken and gradually ease out of severe weather as the morning hours wear on.
Yeah, so we are in the last stages of this, the last gasp of these storms continuing to be severe in our southern Kentucky communities now. Again, Louisville, southern Indiana, we are done. We are all clear. This is
and
not
that
for
warning
us.
has expired.
Yep, there we go. 45 after on the nose. So we are now tornado warning free.
So for folks that want to carry on with our live coverage, we'll keep this going for just a bit longer on the live stream. If you're watching on Wave, we're going to get you back to whatever is on overnight tonight, maybe even a rerun of the news that we had earlier that was streaming. I'm not sure what is on at this point, but we'll bail back out. If you're interested in nonstop weather coverage, we're streaming. Make sure you have the Wave Weather app, and you can watch the Wave Weather live stream. We're on there all the time when there's active weather, or you can always watch Wave Weather Now. It's Louisville's only 24/7 weather channel with frequent live updates.
Yes, and of course it features Wavy, the weather bot that you see here at the bottom of the screen with a crash on the Watterson, or 65 North, I should say, approaching the Watterson here in Louisville. So we'll continue on that live stream, and we'll see you there.
Try to get some sleep, and if you want to continue with weather coverage, we'll be on the live stream.
Hi, everybody. Kevin Harned with you. It's coming up just after 3 o'clock in the morning. We're tracking additional severe storms. We've been watching this all day long for more than 12 hours. And over the last probably 2.5 to 3 hours, we've been on our digital stream and at times having to break into programming like this with tornado warning coverage. We have the latest tornado warning for parts of Adair, Greene, and Taylor counties. This includes Casey Creek, Greensburg, Summersville. This is radar indicated, and you'll notice right over the Greensburg areas where we have the greatest potential to see some of this severe weather. Now, as far as what to expect moving through the rest of the overnight, is this will soon be out of the viewing area. And once this passes through, the threat of the tornado issue will fade away, and the threat of any type of wind event will fade away. We've seen both straight line winds and pockets where we've had rotation, which has yielded the tornado warnings that we've had today. And we've also had some flash flooding to contend with. There is a whole lot of rain moving across parts of central Kentucky, but it's moving into a place where we actually need the rain. It's the wind and the couplet that we're watching over the Greensburg area that we see the greatest potential for that rotation. And for that reason, we have the tornado warning that has been issued. That warning will be in place for another 26 minutes, and that's moving across parts of the southern part of the wave viewing area. That would be Adair, Greene, and Taylor counties. Tawana, if you would jump on Max 1 and just put me into play mode in this severe show, and that way I can control the radar from here. You can see the lightning also associated with all of the storms moving through. So if you're viewing anywhere from, say, north of the parkways, you're clear of severe weather. If you are in parts of Greene, Taylor, Adair counties, you'll notice that that is where we have the greatest potential for that rotation. Let me go back to what we're watching.
Just give me 1 second, Kevin. I'm trying to move some stuff around for you.
You're fine. So give us just a second to reset the computer here. We've been streaming on Wave Weather Now. The rainfall accumulation has been greater to the north. Flooding has been an issue in the wake of this, but now we watch what's happening to the south, and that's where we have the warning that is for the tornado. I'm going to go and zoom into that area. This is a severe thunderstorm warning that encompasses a larger area, and if you were watching the live stream earlier, we said they would put the severe thunderstorm warning out for a larger area, but if they needed to extend the greatest potential for the rotation, that they would do so within that bounds. And that's what we're seeing right over the Greensburg area. It's this notch that we're watching. So let me go to it and show you where we have the greatest velocity showing up, and that's past now the Greensburg area. This is going to move south of Campbellsville, should move just north of Cane Valley. All of this is moving off to the southeast, roughly at about 55 to 60 miles an hour. So this is a pretty fast moving storm, and that's why it's going to be out of here by 3:30 tonight, early tomorrow morning. So the tornado warning now with the greatest part of the rotation passing by 68. That's US 68 that comes down from Campbellsburg into Greensburg, or Campbellsville into Greensburg, and it's right over there. That's where we have the greatest rotation. This is sort of the inflow, and you can see it updating. It's just about to cross over into southern parts of Taylor County, so moving out of Greene into Taylor, and then eventually it will move into parts of Adair County. So that's the zone that we would be watching for this tornado warning to make its move. And we see that warning in place until 3:30 in the morning hours. As far as damage reports that we've had out of any of these storms today, it's tough to tell whether it was tornado damage, and some of these are straight line winds. But what we can tell you is we have had a number of trees and power outages, trees down and power outages take place. Could have been straight line winds in places, could have been minor tornadoes. Too early to tell. We won't know that until we do some of the storm surveys that may come our way during the day tomorrow. We still have another risk of severe storms across southern Kentucky in this general area tomorrow later in the evening hours. 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening, another chance for some strong storms to the south. This is the only tornado warning that we have across our viewing area. It's one of several that we have had today. Why we're seeing the warning issued is this notch right here. This is an inflow into the storm. Let me show you that on the reflectivity as well. So when we look at the radar view, you can see that as well. It's not as defined, but it's still, again, these squiggles in the line that we watch where we have the disturbance along that leading edge, and that's where we're starting to see at least some potential for rotation. We noticed that getting tighter and tighter as soon as we ended the live stream, and obviously that's why we've stayed here all night to make sure we could keep you updated on these storms as they move through the area. And they're almost out of the viewing area. We still probably have another half hour on this until this whole line makes its way through. Tawana Andrews here. She'll be reporting live from Churchill Downs with our Dawn at the Downs coverage that will begin coming up at 4:30, moving into the 5 o'clock hour. Carson Meredith will be here through that time as well, keeping you updated. Ryan Hoke just departed the station right as the warning was coming out. So we do have our whole team that's been watching this weather throughout all day today, and we'll be here throughout this entire week as we go into a very busy Derby week, making sure we have everything lined up for you so you know what to expect. For now, it's a focus all on the area to our south and our southern communities. South of Campbellsville is where we would see the greatest part of this wind. It's already passing by US 68, and then again, moving fast, 55, 60 miles an hour as we move this through the area. That is what we're noting on the radar this evening. Tawana, I don't know if you have any information this time of night. Damage reports really are so sparse, especially when we're talking about something in such a rural area.
Yeah, I'm continuing to keep an eye on as many platforms as I can so far. Not seeing any reports of any damage from this storm as it moves through portions of Greene County, but it is booking at a pretty good clip right now. So just a heads up for those of you in the Holmes area that moves towards you as we get closer to about 2:19. That's Central Time. For Casey Creek, it looks like it's going to be into your area based on its current speed as we get closer to 2:26 a.m. Central Time. For those of you in the Dunnville area, as it continues to push off towards the east, it looks to be moving into your area around 3:36. That's Eastern Time. So this is thankfully moving pretty quickly, and we'll have to continue to keep an eye on that rotation as it continues to march off towards the east right now, because we've had a couple of these strong storms overnight with the strong winds, and we've had a couple of tornado warnings in our area, Kevin. So we still have a little while longer for this to continue to move through, but thankfully it is moving rather quickly. Something I did also notice on the backside of this, by the way, was a little bit of some hail towards portions of Summersville and Dunnersburg earlier, but thankfully that looks to have lightened up in that area, so that's certainly some good news. And it looks like we're getting another severe thunderstorm warning out ahead of that tornado warning, so we can jump onto that, Kevin, with this storm as it continues to march east, because it looks like the National Weather Service is trying to get ahead of this storm as it pushes into portions of Adair County as well.
And the good news is with this warning coming out, that would mean for the National Weather Service that they would expect that as the sort of rotation broadens out, that this would now transition to a severe thunderstorm warning and hopefully allow that tornado warning to fade away. And that's what we've seen over the last couple of scans. We did have 57-mile-per-hour winds. We can come back to the key. We've got the severe thunderstorm warning here, and I'll just go to that briefly to show you that that goes until 3:45. It still comes with the tag tornado possible, which again, it's a much broader warning, and that still allows them the ability within that warning to put a tornado warning if they need to. This severe thunderstorm warning for Adair County also includes parts of Casey, Lincoln, and Russell until that 3:45 expiration time. So let me again go back to the tornado warned storm. I'll zoom into that for you. As we zoom into the tornado warned storm, I'll put the velocity on. This is the reflectivity. This shows us how heavy the rain is falling in places, and we do have very heavy rain. We have a tremendous amount of lightning with these storms too. You can see that as this storm makes its way off to the south and east, we're sort of cleaning up the warning just a bit. We pushed it out of Greene County with the exception of just a little place there, but for the most most part, by all intents and purposes, this is now south of Campbellsville for southern parts of Taylor County and northern parts of Adair County, north of Columbia, fairly rural area. Homes, if you're familiar with the lake, which is the Green River Lake area, not far from Campbellsville, it sits just south, and that's where we have the warning. So we do have the potential to see some strong winds with this, but the rotation has broadened out, and we can see that as we look at the velocity in particular. So I'm going to go to that, and I'll put the velocity on. It's not as sharp of a sort of couplet that we had or a notch, but we still have some powerful winds, and that's what we're looking at here with these brighter pink colors. That's a push of wind that's coming across southern parts of Taylor County, south of the Campbellsville area, and that will move across northern Adair. With that, we could have some wind damage. Even if it's straight line winds, we could still see some areas that experience some power outages. That's been a very common trend throughout the day today, where with these storms, as they sort of power up and they push forward, we get that push of wind that creates some wind damage, and then things ease up after that. And we've seen that time and again throughout the day today, and that's what we're seeing now. So it looks like the rotation is broadening out, which would mean a lesser tornado threat, but with that, we still see the powerful wind, which could yield still a straight line wind threat. So for folks that are listening to us from southern Taylor County, northern Adair County, that would be what we watch for now, would just be that push of wind that's coming in. We've had a number of areas today experience power outages. Crews have been working hard to try to get folks back online. With that, we still have thousands without power across the viewing area, and Tawana has an update on that.
Yeah, thankfully, we haven't gotten any reports so far out of Greene County of any outages, which is certainly some good news. So that may be the fact that that wind isn't quite reaching the ground there, but we'll continue to watch it. Most of the power outages, though, that we are seeing right now are further to the north, where we had those stronger storms moving through earlier in the overnight hours. So for those of you in Oldham County, 32% of the county is still without power. That's about 7,000 people. Trimble County, you're seeing about 1,000 people, just over 1,000 people without power in your area. And even into the metro, this number is down to just about 3,600 people without power this morning, which is a lot better than what it was overnight. For those of you over into Crawford County, just over 1,000 people without power as well, but still watching those numbers coming in for where we're seeing the strongest of those storms right now. The numbers are low, but of course, Kevin, you know, it takes some time for that information to come in. So we're going to be continuing to watch this for the early morning hours.
Yeah, and one important part of the puzzle that we're watching, you can see now some of that orange showing up. Anytime we see that orange, it's indicative of some very strong winds. So we certainly have the strong wind moving again, southernmost part of Taylor County, crossing over near Cane Valley. This is going to be a very strong push of wind with that regardless. Again, it could be elevated, but what we would look for with that would be, are there heavy rains to pull that down to the surface? So while we're looking at the wind, let's keep an eye right here. And as I put the radar view on, you're going to say, well, what's that look like? Yes, we have heavy rain falling there. That means some of that could be being drugged down to the ground. So we could have very powerful winds knocking down some trees and power lines in places across extreme southern Taylor County at this point. Everything would add up if that indeed were the case. So wouldn't be surprised to see that. Tornado warning continues for another 14 minutes along the boundaries of southern Taylor County, northern Adair County. We're going to push this storm right across northern Adair, takes it through Dunbar Hill, will eventually make its way over toward Dunville as it moves out of the viewing area and out of the county. Once that happens, the threat of severe weather will be ending. These storms are moving off to the east, and the whole line is jogging to the south, roughly at about 55 miles an hour. So as that presses past, the threat of severe weather fades, and with that, we'll all be able to get a little more rest. What little bit of the night there is left. It's still very early in the morning hours. Down there, it's 2:16. Here in Louisville, it's 3:17. And we continue to see the storms weaken across the area. Let me zoom out for folks that may be watching that have heard weather radios go off and say, where is this weather going on? This is in the southernmost part of the viewing area. Everybody in southern Indiana is in the clear. Louisville in the clear. If you are anywhere north of the parkways, you are in the clear for severe weather. if you are in the southern part of the viewing area across parts of southern Taylor or Adair County, that's the only area we would be concerned with for any type of potential damaging wind or possible tornado. And that's where we have the tornado warning, even though that couplet on that storm has broadened out. The velocities have broadened out a bit across that region. I'll zoom back into that only to point out as I get ready to do that we've had a lot of rainfall across the region today. Let me put on the lightning first because we have a tremendous amount of lightning. Even in the lighter rain behind the initial line, we have lightning. So it's not out of the question that you're like, I thought the rain and the heaviest part of this was over. I'm still hearing the thunder. I see the lightning. That is still true in some places, but that would not be severe. That will gradually end. The strongest part is along that leading edge that you see off to our south, moving out of the viewing area. When we look at some of the reports that we've had from across the region, we certainly have had a lot of rainfall coming in. So I want to show you some of those rain totals as well. Picking up over the last, well, again, we reset the 24-hour total, but notice in Louisville, over 2 1/3 inches. Same story in Shelbyville. We've been adding to these rain gauges for some time past the last 24 hours as we go back in time. We look to the radar view. I'm going to zoom back to the area to our south. Let's check that rotation once again as we await 3:30 to show up for the expiration time of this warning to come to an end. We continue to look at southern Taylor County, northern Adair County, and here comes the velocity for you. When we look at the velocity, we're looking for where we could see two things. One would just be a push of wind, which is where we had those orange colors. They've faded just a bit, so we've even seen that decrease a bit. That's near Cane Valley. We also could look for where we would have gate-to-gate wind shear or a couplet where we have winds going toward the radar, winds coming away from the radar. We don't have that either, really. So that's again broadened out. That would be this general area here, but that has broadened out enough to say it's probably less concerning than what it was before. That gives credence to the fact that I suspect they're not going to carry on with another tornado warning past this, and if this trend continues, they may even let this one go early. However, it still contains quite a bit of wind, and with that, if we were to pull it down to the ground, we could have some issues. Obviously, it's 3:20 in the morning. Down there, it's 2:20 in the morning. Getting reports is not easy, and especially if they're in isolated areas, and this moving across a very rural area doesn't help with those reports either. Let's go over to Tawana just to see if anything at all is coming in, if that means wind from the south or even flooding issues that may be happening closer to that main line.
Yeah, so far I haven't seen any reports of any flooding issues. I haven't seen any reports of any damage so far from wind, which is certainly some good news. Even tracking some of the Trimark cameras in those areas further to the south, I've been seeing traffic slowing down, but I haven't been quite seeing anything in terms of impacts, in terms of flooding on the roadways. Now, keep in mind, just because we're not getting in those reports doesn't mean it's not happening. I interacted with a lot of that heavy rain and some more of that ponding on the roadway, and even a little bit of hydroplaning in my way into work. So certainly just something to keep in mind. If you do have to head out, make sure you wait till that line, at least if you can, moves on by, and that should allow you to get, of course, the worst of it past you before you head on out. But even after that point, make sure you're being extra careful, because there could still be debris on the roadway. There could still be, of course, the ponding that you cannot quite see. So you want to make sure that you're extra careful traveling, especially since it's still dark and early, Kevin, and there's just so many hazards that aren't always you're able to see without the light of day. So you want to make sure that you're extra careful. It does look like they trimmed back that tornado warning significantly, which is certainly some good news, but we still got 9 more minutes, about 8 more minutes left on this before it is out of our area and potentially canceled. It looks like they're working to see how things are going to be evolving in terms of the wind becoming a little bit more dissipated, and that core couplet isn't as drastic, Kevin. So we might get this warning canceled on time, which certainly would be a good news for our coverage area for sure.
Yeah, and this will end the severe weather threat as we push it across parts of Adair County. We still see that push of wind coming coming through northern Adair, and that's where we have the tornado warning. So this would be the couplet that we saw broaden out, but we still have strong wind even south of that tornado warning, which is well within the bounds of the severe thunderstorm warning. So two things at play here, both with just a push of wind and where we could have the greatest rotation. Nonetheless, that is much broader than it was. That's now approaching Dunbar Hill. This is extreme northern Adair County. This will be out of here by 3:30. The warning will expire on time. The threat of the tornado will come to an end, and then eventually the wind surrounding that will also pipe down. But until then, we have the threat for both wind and a very broad area of rotation going on in northern parts of Adair County. This same storm, by the way, did produce 57-mile-per-hour winds back in Hart County. We were tracking that as we moved it into Greene County. It had weakened somewhat, and boy, it didn't take long for it to tick back up to where we had a decent couplet on that as it moved across parts of Greene County, and that's where we came back on with a tornado warning near Greensburg, and then have been tracking that across southern parts of Taylor, northern Adair counties over the last few minutes. It's 3:23. This warning goes for another 7 minutes, and we'll stay with you through that time. I'm going to zoom back to our home view. Let me just put on the radar, and with that, I'll add the lightning, because the lightning really shows how intense these storms still are. But we've got quite a bit of lightning with all of these storms moving across the southern part of the viewing area. Lightning, even in the lighter stratiform rain behind it, that shows up all the way to the Ohio River, including here in Louisville, where we're seeing some of those lightning strikes. That's sort of impressive in its own right, just noting that we have very light rain, but has lightning dotted in it. That radar view shows to our south. Let me go back to the radar view here. Again, the heaviest rain. The tornado warning, again, fading fast. We've got it broadened out so much now that seeing there would be a tornado would be almost impossible at this point with that signature that we're seeing on the radar. We've had a number of storm reports coming in today of damage, and I can show you some of those as well. These will be some of the local storm reports. Most of these coming in from earlier today, including the flooding here in Louisville, some trees down, power lines down. We had our own problems here in Jefferson, Oldham, over into southern Henry County, northern parts of Shelby County. That was a pretty wicked line of storms that moved through earlier around 7:30 this evening here in Louisville. Now, as we go back to some of the reports, I can put on MPING wind reports. These would be some of the most recent reports. None coming in. Part of that is because of the time of day. So many people are asleep, can't really see well, even if you're looking out the windows. So some of this will not be visible until the light of day in the morning. And with that, I think we'll see more and more issues that arise in terms of damage that has happened across the area. These are some of the latest ones. These are trees that have been uprooted just outside of the viewing area. That, too, was a tornado-warned storm that moved across parts of central Kentucky. We've had a number of those, but we've also had a number that haven't been tornado-warned that have produced wind damage. And that's something that we have seen throughout the evening and the overnight hours. Let's go back to the radar view. I'll zoom back in for us as we go back to that area down across parts of Adair County. Let me zoom into that, and then we'll put the velocity back on. The only warning that we have is a severe thunderstorm warning, and embedded in that is a very small area of northern Adair County where we have the tornado warning. And that's going to be allowed to expire on time. And I'll just show you again, that couplet is so broad there. I mean, we see it, you can see it, but it's broad. And we do have a wind that stretches from Holmes down toward Columbia. So that's a pretty good push of wind moving through Holmes. And if you're familiar with the lake, you go up into parts of Taylor County, you hit Holmes Bend. But this general area, as you work across northern parts of Adair County, seeing the worst of the wind at this point, possible rotation in the northern part with a good push of strong wind just south of Holmes, just north of Columbia. Tawana, one more time. Anything new?
Anything new? No, not getting any reports new coming in, but did find the Adair County Mesonet camera. You can kind of see that rain just pouring down on that camera where that is starting to move in. Not quite seeing the wind picking up on this particular sensor just yet either. So that wind hasn't quite made it to that sensor, that Kentucky Mesonet sensor just yet, but we'll be watching it. But overall, things are really just about the heavy rain and that gusty winds as of right now. Haven't gotten any new reports of any damage or anything along those lines, Kevin, which is a blessing, especially this early in the morning when a lot of people are usually asleep. Hopefully they're up watching us or getting some sort of alert. But as of right now, things are thankfully trying to calm down. Hopefully you can keep it that way throughout the rest of the morning before we potentially deal with another round of some stronger storms across our Kentucky counties for later on, I should say this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon for those of you who are going to be up a little bit later on. But yeah, certainly going to be watching this. Thankfully, it is moving pretty quickly, Kevin, so we don't have too much longer. But my concern for the morning commute, any leftover ponding, especially in the Louisville metro, that could cause some issues for sure.
Yeah, thankfully, I hope that the rain goes down as a needed rain that we all got, where we picked up 1 to 2, some areas 3-4 inches of rainfall, and especially across central Kentucky, which was diving deeper and deeper into a drought. Much of this was needed, but when it comes down so heavy, some of it runs off, and that's sort of bad news. So it's a double-edged sword there. We continue to track what is broad rotation, likely not producing much other than strong winds, which I could see that happening across northern parts and even central parts of Adair County. You don't have to be in the tornado warning, which is a very small area, to see stronger winds press across the region. Notice these are strong winds, too, moving out of Marion County, moving out of northeastern parts of Taylor County, moving across central Adair County. These pockets of orange indicating where we have some very strong winds that doesn't mean they are, could be brought down to the ground by heavy rain. So as we look from the radar view, the further out we go, the higher the beam gets. With that, we can see the strong winds aloft. It's just a matter of, are they coming to the ground? Not in every instance, I'm sure, but where we have the strongest downpours occurring, I can show you that on the radar, that would be, let me go back to the radar. There we go. That would be where we could see some of that being brought down to the ground. So there is some alignment with upper level strong winds versus the strongest of the downpours that could bring that down to the surface. And that's where we could see some of those straight line winds push out of the storm and really create some problems without any rotation at all. Now, we do have broad rotation that's moving, which is why we've had the tornado warning in place for the last little bit. We have less than a minute left on that tornado warning, and I suspect we're going to see this red polygon fall off of the map for northern Adair County, likely not get replaced, at least in this next issuance. We'll keep the severe thunderstorm warning in place for the wind. There it goes. No other warning at this point. This will continue moving through. This will be the leading edge, and once this makes its way to the southern part of Adair County, any threat in our viewing area is over. So the only county that we need to worry about in our viewing area is the southern part of Adair County. Everybody else is in the clear, and we're going to let you get back to bed, and we'll continue working on the forecast for Tuesday. Let me check in with Tawana one more time before we say goodbye, and we'll get one more last report from her, and I'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah, just continue to keep an eye on those potential power outages. I did notice an uptick in Marion County, actually, now up to 1,400 customers without power as of right now. But for Greene, Taylor County, for those of you in Adair County, as of right now, just 1 to 2 customers per county I'm seeing right now. The majority of the issue still further to the north towards the Louisville metro area into portions of Oldham, Trimble counties, and Shelby counties. That's where we see the majority of those power outages in terms of concentration as of right now. But outside of that, yeah, things are significantly improving, Kevin. So we do get a break before we have to watch the radar again later on for your Tuesday afternoon.
You know, it's been a long time since we've seen that power outage map with almost every county in the viewing area filled with at least some color. And that's just an indication of what we've experienced over
over the course of the last 12 hours, and that has been some pretty wild weather with strong winds, possibly some tornadoes. We'll know more as the day on Tuesday unfolds of how they get surveyed. Regardless, the winds were strong enough to down some trees and power lines to create some issues. We'll keep this severe thunderstorm warning going for a few more minutes. Once it passes across southern parts of Adair County, it's completely out of our viewing area. Columbia, while you're seeing heavy rain, the threat of severe weather has ended, and by all intents and purposes, everyone should be able to get at least a little bit of rest from this point forward. We're going to say goodbye for now. If we need to jump back on for any crazy reason, we will. Remember, don't drive through flooded roads, turn around, don't drown. We do have another chance for some stronger storms across parts of central Kentucky late on Tuesday. We're going to be updating that on Sunrise. You can catch Carson Meredith at 4:30 on Wave Sunrise, and you can catch Tawana out at the track, Churchill Downs with Dawn at the Downs. That'll kick in at 5 a.m. In the meantime, I'll say goodnight for now, and we'll see you again back here on Tuesday.
They are my target.